And welcome back to FoxNews.com Live. Let's talk about the job picture. And for that, we're joined right now by Dr. Woody, Dr. Michael Woodward. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be here, Patty Ann.
And your topic today, and you have an article about it on FoxNews.com, is about freelancing and the fact that this isn't just an option that a few people take, like waitresses who want to be artists or etc., but that it's actually 83% of millennials, which are those between 18 and 30, say that freelancing, or gigging as it's called, is actually a cornerstone of their career strategy.
Sure, and Patty Ann, look at the facts right now. A recent Rasmussen poll found that 89% of adults believe that college kids are going to have a really hard time finding a job. And on top of that, 1 in every 2 recent grads under the age of 25 is either jobless or underemployed. So this is a real issue that we have to face. And so what's happening is they're turning to this idea of gigging or doing freelance work in order to cobble together a kind of career and a way of generating some solid income so that they can make ends meet. So it's definitely a new trend, and I think it's been coming on the last 5 years or so.
It's difficult, though. You don't have any stability, and also the benefits issue is difficult.
It's definitely not easy, and think of it this way. Essentially what this idea of gigging in the new economy is really about doing freelance work, which is something that's been around for quite a long time. It's definitely not a new idea. It's just that it's becoming more of a trend for kids to consider coming right out of school. Now, think of it as, a lot of people refer to it as a 1099 contractor for tax reasons. It's basically being an independent contractor who is going out there and soliciting people to use your services. So anything from being a virtual assistant part-time for someone, to being a graphic designer, videographer, whatever the case is, it's someone who's going out there and independently getting contracts from a lot of either individuals or companies who need your services.
All right, so you have outlined the pros and cons for us of freelancing or gigging, and we're going to talk about some of those now. What's the biggest pro?
Well, if you really truly want to have control over your own destiny, that's one way to do it. Being a freelance individual out there and doing contract work allows you to pick and choose the type of work you want to do typically, but it depends on what your cash flow looks like. You may not always have the choices you want to have. But it does give you some control over your own destiny, and certainly a lot of flexibility in your schedule and how you want to schedule your leisure time, which is important for millennials now, versus your work time. The other part of it is earning potential. You really have the ability to decide what type of rates you're going to set and how much you want to work, as long as the work is available out there. So those are 2 pros that I think can be attractive depending on your personality and I think your willingness to get out there and hustle.
Yeah, you do have to be able to market yourself. You have to be comfortable with that, or it's just too hard to stand out in the crowd of freelancers. And let's go into the cons now. You have several of those as well, unfortunately.
Yeah, and like I said, things that can be a pro can be a con. The first thing you mentioned is you have to get out there and market yourself. So you do have to wear many hats. Doing freelance work means that you may not always get the opportunity to be a practitioner of your craft all the time. In other words, you've got to do the marketing, you've got to do the sales, you've got to do your own finances a lot of times. So that kind of stuff isn't always easy for someone who truly is a practitioner of their craft and wants to focus on doing that. So that can be a drawback, but some people also like that side of it too. The other side is certainly the unpredictability. So even though you may have control over your own destiny and be able to do the stuff you enjoy and when you want to, the fact is when work comes in and when those opportunities are there is not always going to be in your control. So that's going to be a tough thing, and it's going to be one of those things you have to get used to, that uncertainty that you live through and not knowing when that next paycheck is going to come. And that's another part of it also, is the financial, quote, instability. You don't have that regular paycheck coming in every 2 weeks or getting deposited in your account. So that can be a little stressful. Like I said, it depends on your personality and I think how resilient you really are.
And how important is it, if you're going to go into this field, or this type of employment, I should say, to get on the social networking, or I should say career networking sites like LinkedIn or Craigslist, versus just maybe advertising in the local paper?
Yeah, Patty Ann, you're absolutely right. The big challenge is getting yourself out there. And one of the assets that a lot of young folks, especially the millennial generation, has is they really have a good grasp and understanding of social media. Now, what's really interesting, though, is a recent Tweet My Job survey found that a lot of young people, although they love using social media for personal stuff, tend to shy away from using it for business purposes or for self-promotion for the type of work that they're doing, especially if they're independent contractors. So that's a little bit of I think, a hump that they have to get over, because if you're really going to put yourself out there, there's a tremendous power, particularly to LinkedIn, to Facebook, and to Twitter. More so, I think, LinkedIn and Twitter, if you really want to promote your services and what you do and get it out there. Because remember, if nobody knows about you or no one knows what you're doing or what you offer, then it doesn't matter. You're not going to get any business. So those are very powerful and certainly cost-effective ways to get out there.
And when it comes to things like LinkedIn, one of the most important things is references. You have to be able to
Sure.
feel comfortable asking people to write one on your behalf, be willing to post it on your behalf. But also, you can't have an off day. If you're salaried, you have one bad day, you're not going to lose your job. But
Right.
you have to be really on your game every time you do a job, so that word of mouth is always going to be positive and you can get those references.
Well, Patty Ann, you hit on something that's really important. It's that notion of word of mouth or personal referral. Remember, the job market, whether it's freelance work, whether it's consulting work, or getting a full-time job, hasn't always been about who you know. It's always been about who you know. So the key is using social media extends that sort of who you know network beyond just your close circles and those people that you're in regular contact with. So it's important to solidify that, like you say, with references to make sure that people are kind of working that chain of folks who know you through social media, so they feel more comfortable and they say, oh yeah, you know, I know Patty Ann through another friend of mine, and I can refer them or link them together, and I believe that friend of mine. So I think you're right. It's very important to use it and use it very effectively that way.
On the other hand, you have a lot of people who feel uncomfortable with LinkedIn, for example. If somebody says, oh, hi, you know, I want to list you as a connection, and you have to accept or reject them. Pretty hard to actually reject someone. So you can end up saying, oh, all right, I'll recommend you, or write down that you're a connection, which means I endorse you. And maybe you don't really.
Well, first of all, I don't have any problem rejecting people. So,
okay.
and you know, it's one of those things. Don't worry about it. It's not like they're going to track you down or find you. But here's the thing. It's probably more of an issue with Facebook, because Facebook tends to be more personal connections and more for your own personal use. So I think people tend to be more restrictive in their use of Facebook versus LinkedIn. You're trying to broaden and develop a larger network. I don't think that just because you're linked to someone, you're necessarily endorsing that individual. And I would hope that that isn't the case, because especially if you have a lot of connections on LinkedIn, you don't necessarily know what everyone's doing, who they're doing, the type of work they're doing, or how they're doing it, or whatever. So I think you have to be careful about that. I wouldn't say that it's an endorsement, but at the same time, it is a connection, and usually you're only just a couple degrees separated from a lot of people that are trying to connect to you. So you want to do your research and make sure that you're connecting with the right kind of folks, and monitor the stuff that they're posting, because if they're posting things that are weird or counter to your brand or what you believe in, you might want to de-link from them or jettison them from your world of connections, if you will. But
wow, we're seeing the harsh
it's one of those
side
things
of
you got to
Dr.
play the
Woody.
game.
All right. Dr. Michael Woodward, thank you so much for joining us as always. And again, if you want to check out his article, it is on foxnews.com, and it's called Gigging, which is another word for freelancing, in the New Economy. Is it for you? And he's got the pros and the cons. So thank you again for joining us.
Thanks so much.